Welcome back to another episode of 40 Facts About the 40K Universe. I am your host, Gershwan, and today we're going to continue talking about Chaos Space Marine warbands as we get into the Mind Eaters. If you're new to the channel, subscribe. We post Warhammer 40K lore videos every single day. If you have any suggestions for any other Chaos warbands that you guys would like us to cover, please comment down below. And if you enjoy our content, thank our patrons on Patreon. Link in the description if you guys want to support us. But with that said, let's get into 40 facts on the Mind Eaters. The Chaos Warband, known as the Mind Eaters, is a thrall band of the Thousand Suns Traitor Legion. This traitor successor chapter is led by the sorcerer Hazaphat, a magister who received visions from the Chaos God of Change. In these visions, Tzeentch laid out a potential future where the magister consumed the thoughts and memories of an entire world, and by doing so, ascended to demonhood. This Tzeentch-ordained destiny would only be achieved if Hazaphat and his followers completed 999 special rites that would further the Architect of Fate's plan in the mortal realm. The Mind Eater Warband embarked on the first of these chaotic rites early in the 32nd millennium, with the hopes that the journey would end in apotheosis. The Mind Eater's journey would be a long and grueling one, filled with death and destruction, but one of the most notable rites occurred late in the 41st millennium, when an endless psychic scream lured the sorcerer warlord of the Night Lords, Vasilix the Shrouded, to the mind world of Xanthamatos. As his warband set about butchering the Imperial war crews, the terror of those slain continued to linger in the form of disembodied warp geists. The sight of spectral figures crowding the minds and howling with fear blinded Vasilix to the true sorcery at play, for the planet had been hexbound by Hazaphat and his Mind Eaters. As the warlord reveled in the resonant terror, the Mind Eaters sealed the minds with the Night Lords still inside. In the final twist of Hazaphat's curse, the spirits of the dead burst into warp flames, filling the subterranean tunnels with screaming flame. By the time the mines were reopened, every last Night Lord had been reduced to ash, all except Vasilix the Shrouded, whose body was melted into a lump of dark crystal. The crystallized remains of the warlord was Hazaphat's goal. Calling it the Shrouded Crystal, it pulsed with the raw psychic energies of the sorcerer it once was. This gruesome relic was asked for by Tzeentch as the 765th rite. Very few reports exist of the Mind Eater's actions after this event, which became known as the Crystallized Night. The next major action occurred many years later, when the warband undermined the millennia-long battle plan of Korthafos. Korthafos was a particularly powerful chaos sorcerer of the Thousand Suns Traitor Legion. Sometimes referred to as an exalted sorcerer, he was a practitioner of the cult of magic, which meant he was dedicated to the pure and unfettered use of sorcery. Infuriated that his plan was thwarted by Hazaphat, the exalted sorcerer challenged the presumably less powerful sorcerer to a psychic duel. As the two locked minds in combat, it was clear that Korthafos was the more powerful psyker, but Hazaphat unsheathed the Dagger of Reflections, acquired centuries ago during his 87th rite. The mind flames cast out by Korthafos were drawn towards the shimmering dagger before being forced back in a thunderous wave, pulverizing the brain matter of the exalted sorcerer. Korthafos began to slump over, with liquid ooze coming from his helm, but before he hit the ground, Hazaphat plunged the ensorcered dagger into his fallen opponent's chest, carving out his still beating heart. This was the trophy of his 888th rite. Finally, Hazaphat and his Mind Eaters descended upon the Imperial hive world of Mangal III, amidst an ongoing Tau invasion. Before landing, the sorcerer shattered the Shrouded Crystal in orbit, casting his shards throughout the atmosphere to summon an impenetrable darkness which surrounded the planet. Cut off from orbital reinforcements and relays, the Tau armies and Imperial planetary defense forces continued to fight in utter confusion. In the Valley of Sacrifice, between the lines of the battling armies, the Mind Eaters arrayed the trophies acquired from the 998 preceding rites in a great crescent, and between the horns of the crescent, Hazaphat mounted an enormous pyre. From its pinnacle, he beheld the encroaching Tau and Imperial forces. They were to be his, their thoughts and memories devoured as had been foretold nearly 10,000 years before. Holding the hearts of Korthafos, Hazaphat ignited the pyre with their blood, incanting an oath to Tzeentch as the flames began to lap his armor. The sudden rush of psychic energy toward Hazaphat shredded the minds of hundreds of thousands of combatants on the planet, siphoning their very life force into the sorcerer. But as the Grand Conspirator's change took hold of Hazaphat, he screamed in agony. The vast armies were physically pulled towards him, like gnats caught in a thundering vortex. Ranks of screaming bodies and enormous war engines flew across the darkened land, colliding with Hazaphat, where they were quickly absorbed by his warping form. His body devoured metal and flesh with equal voraciousness as it continued to grow, Howling in excruciation from the newly forming maws, his mass pupated, not into the form of a demon prince as was expected, but to that of a muthless vortex beast. A nightmarish monstrosity and an unnatural abomination of the will of Tzeentch, Hazafet's body rearranged itself as his muscle structure grew and split, forming a massive and fanged jaw where tendrils formed from his warped putrefied inner organs, flapping outward. The sorcerer became a true warp abomination, growing larger with each sacrifice as his hulking body became a psychic reservoir for chaos energy. The warp vortex emanating from the hideous creature extended outward with each newly consumed sacrifice until it encircled the entire planet, and with a final mind-tearing scream, the planet itself was torn from real space to become Tzeentch's new demon world. In its place, there was left only a perpetual darkness, an echo of Hazafet's final, pitiful cry. Few within the Imperium know the origin of the warband's name. The few inquisitors of the Ordo Malleus that have come across the legend of these traitors within the arcane history books will understand that the name derives from the Magister's attempt to consume the minds of the warriors of Mangal III. There have been a few reports of heretical followers of the ruinous powers attempting to discover the whereabouts of the demon world created by the sacrifice of Hazafet. Hundreds of chaotic relics gathered by the warband throughout its almost 10,000-year-long hunt are simply laying on the demon world, hidden somewhere in Tzeentch's realm in the warp, an incredible prize for any daring heretic. While it is believed that the majority of the Mind-Eaters were consumed during the storm, there are some that believe a few Chaos Space Marines managed to escape. These would be the last of the Mind-Eaters' warband, and rumors claim that they participated in the battle for the Aspect system, a conflict that occurred recently, sometime after the Great Rift's creation. The few remaining Mind-Eaters were assisting a cabal of Thousand Sun sorcerers from the cult of manipulation as they were attempting to warp reality around the stars of the Aspen system in order to extinguish their light and engulf the system in etheric darkness. The first Imperial force tasked to stop the terrible ritual was a squad of Allora's custodians from the Adeptus Custodes. They were later joined by a Grey Knight strike force and a large contingent of Skitarii. But when they approached the Aspen system, an enormous solar flare separated the Imperial forces from each other. While the Grey Knights and Skitarii rejoined together and destroyed the profane wards sustaining the Hex, the Adeptus Custodes were nowhere to be seen. In truth, the Allora's custodians had been set adrift in the warp by Aspen's solar flare and were later captured by the waiting Thousand Suns. This was the last recorded encounter of the Mind-Eaters' warband. It is unclear if the surviving traitors have named a new leader after the death of their Magister, or if they have been absorbed by one of the Thousand Suns' heretical warbands. Regardless of the tragedy of the sorcerer Hazafet, the outcome of the warband's journey pleased the ever-scheming chaos god Tzeentch. Many of the rites performed by the Mind-Eaters are yet to be revealed, another proof of how Tzeentch treats his worshippers like pawns, and the chaos god's amazing foresight in the great game. And those were 40 facts on the Mind-Eaters. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Thank our patrons on Patreon. Their $1 contribution really helps out the channel. We are creating more videos because of them. One of the videos that I'm working on right now is how to create a Chaos Space Marine warband, similar to the video that I created on how to create a successor chapter. The warband and the successor chapter are very similar. There is a huge difference, and you see that huge difference when we talk about the Mind-Eaters lore, but that difference is that you have to think of the relationship between the warband and their patron. In this situation, it was a big focus on the actual leader, so Hazafet, the sorcerer, and the connection that he had with Tzeentch. Tzeentch gave him a vision, but when you're creating your own Chaos Warband, you really want to focus on what the purpose of the warband is to your patron. It's a lot easier for a successor chapter of the Space Marines because it's just like you're trying to be the hero. But for a actual Chaos Warband, you have more room to be creative. You don't necessarily just have to be a warband that is dedicated on chaos. It could be like the Mind-Eaters, your main leader is focused on becoming a demon prince. But then there's another element to that, and that is the element of the fact that they were trying to fulfill all these rites, all these rituals in order to become the demon or to ascend to demonhood. But Tzeentch was using them just so that he can, plan his schemes for the future and stuff like that. So hopefully it goes well. I'm still working on that. Again, thank our patrons on Patreon. If you guys want to support us, the link is down in the description. If you can't support us on Patreon, we understand, simply by liking, commenting, sharing, just watching the videos. It helps out the channel a lot. So thanks for listening, guys, and I'll talk to you tomorrow. This was Gershwan with One Mind Syndicate signing out.
Always used to put my freedom first in any situation.